If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members. Unlimited defense budgets, unmatched legal expertise. Carry the same level of support police officers have. Carry CCW Safe, the highest caliber.
Good evening, everybody. We are back, and back in the driver's seat is myself, Jon Wheaton of the Righteous Savages, your host tonight in a very, very important episode. And I am joined by my good friend and colleague, S2. How are you tonight, my brother?
I'm hanging in there, brother.
Yeah, I heard you had a little bit of a scrape with a tooth, and anybody that's ever had an issue with a tooth, that is, it's amazing how those little things can completely knock you on your butt.
So. Yeah, and it was really odd how it happened too. I broke a tooth eating a piece of toast.
That's always fun. That's always fun. Nothing crazy, just a little piece of toast. That's fun. But anyways, real quick before we get started, we have a really important episode for you guys tonight. We're going to kind of do a really, really, really deep dive into China. And the history of China on the global stage in the modern age, really kind of going back to the 1970s, and why we should be very concerned with what has been going on over the last 40 years with regards to China's slow but persistent takeover on the global stage, and why we should be fighting what they are doing on the global stage with everything within our being. But before we get to that, I just mentioned there is a very large portion or section of information that I have put into the SITREP, and the SITREP is for our guardians, and that is the Survival Dispatch News Guardians, and that is on our Patreon/Survival Dispatch. So patreon.com/Survival Dispatch. Get on there and you guys sign up. It is $9.99 a month, or you can do a $95 for the entire year. That gives you a little bit of savings, but that gets you access to those SITREPs. Let me tell you, the amount of work that goes into compiling the information, even with modern tools, is a lot of work. I was actually out over the weekend with my son's last basketball tournament for the year, and getting back, thankfully, Chris Heaven was a rock star and set up a lot of the stuff for me, and then I had to fill out the SITREP, but I was busy doing that, and it's a lot of work that goes into that. And if you guys want to show your support to us and get a little bit of extra, go ahead and sign up for those Guardians on that Guardian package on our Patreon. It's also on Substack. You can get the SITREP on our Substack, which is Substack .survivaldispatch.news, and you can check that out at Substack. Very, very cool. You get the SITREP daily. You get our guide for emergencies and disaster preparedness. You get access to our e-magazines, and you get the Signal Chat, which is amazing, and everybody should be in the Signal Chat, because it is a lot of like-minded people doing some really awesome work and posting some amazing things on that platform. But that's it until, so we get into Chapter 1. Chapter 1 is our headline. And if you guys saw the thumbnail, we were talking about the trade war that's going on. And I'm going to kind of title this Chapter 1 as When We Let the Dragon In. So let's talk about China. No, it's not the place down the street. I'm talking about the Chinese Communist Party, the single greatest economic adversary to the United States, and has ever voluntarily empowered, because, let's be honest, China didn't rise. We lifted them. And so on phase one, we go back all the way to 1978. Where Deng Xiaoping rebranded China. China was backward, broke, and post-Mao disaster. If you go back even a little bit further, post-World War II, Mao Zedong took over China with his communist ideal, and Chiang Kai-shek, who was the republic-believing, liberty-believing leader of China during World War II, moved to Taiwan. Taiwan exists because it is the descendants of the Chiang Kai-shek people who fled China after World War II when the communists were taking over.
Chiang Kai-shek was actually exiled to Taiwan. He wasn't.
Yes, you're correct.
Didn't decide to go there.
Yes, I stand corrected. He was forced out, and that's a whole long story that we could get into on how Mao Zedong leveraged his military and allowed Chiang Kai-shek to take harder, heavier casualties during World War II against the Japanese, which in turn led to him having no option but being exiled to Taiwan. But further, to stay on what our topic is today, there was a rebrand of China in 1978. And that is really where we get started here on what we are talking about. Economic policy changes, and they changed how they were going to be on the global stage. That was called the Cultural Revolution. That post-Cultural Revolution, which was Mao's move to make China a communist country, and who basically put a suit on communism, is what Deng Xiaoping did. He basically made it more palatable on the world stage, and he said, "Don't worry, we're totally cool with the markets now. Just ignore the prison camps." We've been ignoring them ever since, and I think you would agree with that, S2. There's still prison camps. There's still slaves working for China, and that is exactly why we have to take this seriously. I'll give you a chance to kind of talk to this first kind of phase part.
Yeah, well, China is completely a slave state. I mean, when you look at it, they're governed by things that they were trying to enact here with ESG, the social credit scoring system, and things like that. And they have, to this day, they still abuse certain groups of people because they believe in religion. You know, we take the Uyghurs, for instance. They're probably one of the biggest people that one of the biggest groups of people that they abuse there, simply because they have a religious ideology, whereas communism, or the CCP and most other brands, don't have any belief in God or any higher power at all. They believe that they are the gods.
Yes. And that's a little side note for everybody. Everybody will always have a god. It just depends on if it's the god or if it's the god of government. And that's really where communism is it believes that government is God and any kind of authoritarian world. So we fast forward now, and phase 2 was Clinton's globalist dream. This is the 1990s. So now we're getting into my lifetime, and I remember where this happened. So we fast forward to the 1990s, and America's economy is booming post the Reagan Revolution, even post Bush Sr.'s presidency. The economy is doing very well. And Bill Clinton is feeling good. So good that he decides that human rights and trade shouldn't be linked anymore. And so we gave China the most favored nation status. And we allowed them to enter the quote unquote free trade world. In 2000, Congress blinded by cheap labor and Wall Street promises grants China permanent normal trade relations. And in 2001, China joins the World Trade Organization, promising to act like a capitalist. Spoiler alert, they lied. And that was really the move that allowed them to gain a foothold here. And so we see in this article from Policy Institute, growing China's trade deficit cost 3.7 million American jobs between 2001 and 2018. This is the dirty little secret that the people that are enriching themselves from China don't want you to know. They don't want you to understand that this has cost massive amounts of American jobs that have been outsourced to a communist regime that doesn't actually care about free trade and doesn't actually care about anything other than gaining more power on the world stage. I'm going to let you speak to that real quick, S2, and we'll kind of do this back and forth through this entire thing.
Yeah, that's the Larry Finks and the Jamie Dimons of the world that are out here saying, "Oh yeah, tariffs are really good things." Out front, behind the scenes, they're really pissed off about this,
Mm-hmm.
because it means that no longer are we going to have cheap goods on the investments that China has been making into their own industrial base, that the financial powers that be have invested in. So it's basically, I think Trump kind of pulled the trigger a little early on backing off on the tariffs. I know that he did that over the weekend, and I think he pulled the trigger on that just a little too soon. I understand why he did it. He wanted to get them to the table, but at the same time, I believe that he also needed to weaken them just a tad bit more, because I don't think anybody can fathom how much money is traded back and forth between China and the United States on a daily basis. I mean, I don't even have the figures on that, but these financial institutions, the Fidelities, the BlackRocks, the
Yep.
Vanguards, the State Streets, they all have access into each other's markets. And interestingly enough, the China stock market was actually owned by an American.
Yep. Yep.
Do you know who it
Well,
is?
no, I don't.
Kelly Loeffler's husband.
Yeah, that's awesome. Why don't you share a little bit more detail on Kelly Loeffler and what that actually means?
So Kelly Loeffler was recently appointed the head of the Small Business Administration. She was a senatorial candidate back in, well, it was in 2020, but I think they had to have a runoff between her and I think it was the communist Ossoff. Um, and of course, this was the day of January 6th when that runoff occurred, and she ended up losing because they cheated. Um, I watched it happen literally in front of my face. I watched where her votes would go up, and then they would go down, and then they would be added over to Ossoff's list. I don't remember if it was Ossoff or Warnock, but I know it was one of the two. But she was the Georgia Senate candidate,
Yep.
and I'm not sure why her losing. Um, I'm not sure what the strategic benefit in that was, other than the Democrats gaining another seat in Congress over that.
Yep.
So I don't know that there's anything that's actually tied to her husband owning the stock exchange, other than maybe the fact that there may have been some special deals made behind the scenes for her to basically lose the election and not challenge it.
Yep. Yep. And real quick, I want to just give a shout out. These are all articles and have been curated through all of this. And I even have some rather long studies on what happened post the most favored nation status, the entry into the World Trade Organization, and how that really set the stage for what the crisis that nobody really wants to actually talk about. Because the reality is during that period of time, there's a lot of politicians that started getting their pockets padded by China, including former fake president Joe Biden, and just about every other politician that you could name are somehow. And if you want to know who is the most pissed off about this trade war, and the ones that probably stand to lose the most, look at the ones that are squawking. It's not everyday people. It's people that are very wealthy and very rich, and that are tied to the hip to China because of what they've been able to do over this period of time. So this is Pew Research, or this is actually a WTO study that I'm going to show here real quick. And I'm not going to go to the top of it, but I'm going to show the conclusion of this paper. So this was what phase 3 happened. I call it the Great Hollowing Out. This is the Great Hollowing Out, where China didn't just compete, they gutted U.S. industries. So steel gone, textiles gone, electronics gone. We used to be a massive manufacturer in all three of those fields, and now we have basically dwindled down to next to nothing. We import almost all of that stuff. And they didn't win at innovation, because we still clean their clocks in innovation, but they undervalued their currency. They subsidized entire industries, and they used slave labor, as we mentioned earlier, all while our politicians smiled and said, this is the greatest for the global. This is great for the global economy. This is when we start talking globalism versus nationalism. And when we talk about being, America first, this is what your politicians have done to you over the last several decades, is they have hollowed out our industries in the name of cheap goods and being able to trade globally and make money. And that's the reality of it. But in this study, the conclusion, this paper finds the relationship between a sharp decline in U.S. manufacturing employment that occurs after 2001. So we're looking at the 2001 to 2018 that the previous article referenced. This change in policy is notable and eliminated uncertainty. Policy increase of tariffs, and it changed the actual level of tariffs. We measure the uncertainty of the gap between actual tariff rates and the level in which they might have risen had their continuation before 2001 been rejected by the president and Congress. So essentially what that's saying is, before then, we would control the influx of products into our country instead of just allowing this. And when you hear this free trade term, what free trade actually is telling you is that both parties, and correct me if I'm wrong here S2, but I think you know where I'm going with this. Both parties are entering into agreement in good faith. And this is where you get to the crux of the problem with China. They're not acting in good faith at all. Would you agree with that, S2? And this is the main problem with dealing with them, is they're not good faith actors.
Well, absolutely. They lie. I mean, everybody knows they lie. They'll tell you one thing to your face and then stick the knife in your back.
Yep, that's absolutely true. And of course, this doesn't matter to the politicians in Washington, D.C. It only matters to the people that live in Michigan, Ohio, and in Pennsylvania. Those jobs that got gutted, those jobs that got shipped to Mexico. And don't let them fool you. China runs a lot of its trade through Mexico, too. And that's one of the big problems.
It wasn't just Michigan, Ohio, or Pennsylvania. The South got hit really hard as well, because the South was actually the textile center of the country for the longest time. We had all of the cotton down here, and I was actually involved somewhat in that business through the proxy business that I was related with. But we started watching all of the textile mills close down here in North Carolina. That was one thing. And then you had the Ohio, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, where you had the Rust Belt, and Ohio was a major steel manufacturer, as well as Pennsylvania. And my father saw a lot of what was going on in Ohio and Pennsylvania, because he serviced a lot of those steel mills.
Yep.
But yeah, it's like I said, and then we also had the fact that the South was also a major furniture manufacturer for many years too. So the South got hit really hard from multiple directions.
Yep. And what's really funny to me is you can actually go back a decade or 2 decades and you can see prominent Democrats, prominent Republicans, people that are still serving in Congress, talking about the dangers of entering into these deals with China and actually allowing them to control a lot of this stuff. So then we move on to what I would call the give me just a second.
Stealing.
Yes. And this is phase 4. So it's theft, espionage, copy paste capitalism. So here's what China is doing. They're using the blueprint that we use in a free society. They're doing it under the guise of free trade, under the guise of, hey, we're a free society, and they're not even close to a free society. They're one of the worst authoritarian regimes out there. And what they do is they steal our stuff. You wonder why you can see some new innovation coming out of the American tech world, and all of a sudden within 2 months, China has 5 different copies of it. They may not be the same kind of quality, but I tell you something else. I see this in the firearms world, and we've talked about this ad nauseum. They're getting better and better and better at making copies of what we make and what we create. And that is theft. It is intellectual property theft. They have engaged in this for decades and decades, and we have done nothing about it. Our government has done nothing about it because, spoiler alert, they're getting paid behind the curtain. They're getting paid by China because China is bringing in so much money from the world, all of these other countries that are dealing with them, and it is allowing them to just pay people off. And that is a dangerous thing.
There's another component to this too, and this is probably something that Jeff O'Donnell might want to hit on at some point in one of his shows, is that China has also been meddling in our elections too.
Yes.
And if we look at how that ties back into all of this, the people that have been in power for the last 4 years all have been backed by China, and they have all been reseated in their positions with China. And if we look at the three key states where there is a very large Chinese presence, you have California, you have Massachusetts, and then you have New York. All of those, all three of those are blue states, and all of those, I guarantee you, China has been involved in meddling in those elections to make sure that Democrats stay seated in those states.
Yep.
That's getting
100%.
that is getting ready to end, and they know it.
Yep. And so we get to, basically, we're kind of backtracking back to 2008. So 2008, a couple of things. That was also the year that Barack Obama won the presidency in 2008, took presidency in 2009. But there was the Belt, Road, and Chains initiative in China. And that was the initiative that China's it was a colossal infrastructure program that this is an article from CFR, which is the Council on Foreign Relations, but it basically talks about, and this is not necessarily a right-leaning article, and a lot of these articles aren't right-leaning, but the little breadcrumbs you get in them are very, very important for the exposition that we're doing tonight. So China's colossal infrastructure investments may usher in a new era of trade and growth for economies in Asia and beyond. But skeptics worry that China's laying a debt trap for borrowing governments. What is that debt trap? Well, the debt trap is basically what they've done with countries like Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka would be a great example of this. They came in and they built a port so that Sri Lanka could enter the world of trade and be able to allow goods to come into this new port. Very high tech. China built it. They actually control it too. And they are basically ransoming this to the Sri Lankan government, which is a very poor country. If you guys know Sri Lanka, I actually have relatives that live in Sri Lanka or are from Sri Lanka. And the issue is they have basically held this port hostage and said, well, you can't actually engage in this trade without giving us money and power. This is how they've done these things for poor countries. And also think about the Panama Canal. All of these things that's going on. They are trying to take control of world infrastructure, tie into why Greenland is so important to Donald Trump. Because China has so much control on the world stage that we have to fight back in some way. And the previous administrations for the last 30 years have they've given lip service to this problem, but they have never actually stood up and done anything to it until Donald Trump's first term. And we'll get to that in a minute. But I'm going to give the floor to you for a second, S2, to speak on that.
What was the question again?
So I wanted you to talk about the dangers of this Belt, Road, and Chains initiative, how China is buying up and building ports and other infrastructure for other countries, then holding them hostage for what they built for them.
There's nothing magical about this. This is just pure extortion. That's all it is.
Mhm.
The CCP, and I have to make this comment because Susana Ala Richard said something earlier about we're talking about the CCP here. We're not talking about the Chinese people. The Chinese people are the victims in all of this.
Yep.
So basically, the CCP, they're nothing but a bunch of thugs. They strong arm. They do whatever they need to do. They've gotten past the kinetic stage of where they need to be kinetic because they got their people under control through kinetics. Now they're basically coming in, and the people that are making deals with them in these countries have basically walked into this trap, and they have allowed the CCP to extort them to get what they want with their expansion. It's
Yep.
like I said, there's nothing magical about this. It's just it's thugs being thugs.
Yes, 100%. And so then let's talk about, like, this is phase 6. So phase 5 was the Belt Road and Chains Initiative. Phase 6 is Made in China 2025. So you're like, oh, 2025, Made in China 2025. That has to be something new. That's incorrect. It's a decade old. In 2015, they launched Made in China 2025, a plan to dominate AI, green energy, aerospace, and semiconductors. This is starting to make sense to you guys in our audience here. This is stuff that's very, very prominent. They started planning this 10 years ago. And this is really,
I dare say they started planning it long before that. I say they probably started planning it in 1966.
yeah, probably. But it was rolled out in 2015. And this was kind of a copy of Germany's Industry 4.0, which really focuses on intelligent manufacturing practices. So essentially what they're trying to do is they've taken our regular manufacturing, and we still do a fair amount of intelligent manufacturing here in the United States. There is still quite a bit of that, and our manufacturing is much more technologically advanced because it's similar to that which you see in Japan and more advanced countries. China, in a lot of ways, is still trying to catch up in those realms, but they're stealing IP so fast that they're catching up at a rapid pace, and they are looking to plan to overtake us and push us into the background, making themselves the higher level sophisticated manufacturer. And that's really what they're trying to go towards, because they have made so much money and they've stolen so many things over the last several decades that they can now move into a prominent position in the intelligent world. And that's really kind of setting the stage for the battle that's going on right now. Is there anything I missed there? Go ahead.
Yep. There's a problem with their theory. Number one, 60% of their factories are shut down right now in China. 60%. They have another
why
problem.
Is that? Go ahead and expound on that a little bit, S2.
Because when the tariffs hit, they ended up, they've got containers and containers and containers stacked in their ports full of goods that they can't ship out right now. So they have to dial back the manufacturing so that they can sell the stuff that they have to begin with. The other problem that they're run into is they can't feed their people. Some people I've seen satellite imagery of things that they've done with their land. They're no longer an agricultural people. A lot of the people are moving out of the cities now, going back into the countryside to grow their own food because they can't feed their people. It's one of the reasons why they've come over here and they've been buying up farmland here so that they can grow their food here and then ship it out of the country. Well, there's a problem with that, is that even though they're growing it here and they own the farmland, everything that comes out of the United States goes over to China and it's tariffed. So they're basically tariffing themselves into the ground. What was it? I think it was a couple of years ago, I saw satellite imagery photos of what they had done to their landscaping. They basically, to fool satellite imagery, they were going around literally spray painting the countryside, putting pieces of rebar in the ground and putting ping pong balls on them to make it look like the countryside was all nice and pretty, when really it's a toxic landscape there. So the big problem with that is if you can't feed your people, you don't have a workforce. You can whip a slave only so many times until he finally falls down from starvation.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. And one of the things that now we get to in this is that there was really a bonus round of what China was able to do, and that was COVID. China gave us a virus, and let's kind of dive really quickly into the reason why China released that virus. There's really no doubt.
Let's stop right there for a second. Okay, we need to make something clear about that.
Yep.
Okay, the China virus was not developed in China or by
Right.
China. It was developed here in the United States
By DARPA
by-
and several other organizations
Dar-
in there.
let's just call it the DoD.
Yep.
Okay. And then as soon as they said that, as soon as Obama put a moratorium on gain of function, it was just kind of a strong suggestion. Basically, they shipped it over to Wuhan, and that was where they leaked it at the 2018 military games.
Yep. And then, well, here's what's crazy about all of this, and you can you can speak even more to this, is that there actually were literal war games played out with COVID in mind years before it actually happened by elitist organizations in like I forget what it was. Yeah, it was World Economic Forum, but there was actually it was actually there was Event 201. Yep. Thank you. I could not remember it. I've heard it 5,000 times by listening to Glenn Beck for years. But yeah, Event 201 was essentially a war game with COVID in mind. Several years, I think it was 2017, if I remember correctly. 2017, they war gamed COVID out. And this was a year before the 2018 event that S2 just mentioned. But they actually kind of were playing it out to see, oh, what do we do when governments actually stand up, or when people inside of specific countries, speaking of the U.S. and who are free-minded people, what do we do in those cases? And, they war gamed all of this out. So they planned it all. Well, and China took advantage of the fact that the West really, they fell for this whole thing. And we played the game right along with everything that they wanted. And they controlled supply chains. They infiltrated universities. They ran surveillance apps disguised as dance platforms. Hello, TikTok. To gather all information they could to try and understand how they could control us better. And
that
go ahead. And failed.
That failed.
Yes, because I think when we look back, I think that COVID, as bad as it was, and I still think it was one of the worst crimes against humanity, especially when it comes to the J words that were tried to force on everybody in the United States. I think it was one of the worst crimes against humanity of all time. But it was also somewhat of a very big failure, because a lot of people weren't ready to be completely controlled yet. And they woke a lot of people up. They woke a lot of the wrong people up, and they didn't actually anticipate the pushback that they got, I think, on the world stage. So, but
I term it this way. They awakened the sleeping giant, and he is pissed.
Yep. 100%. Yep. So when did China start dominating? And this moves us into kind of like we're bringing this all to a head. We've got a lot to cover in this chapter one. I know that, and I'm trying to keep you guys engaged as much as possible, but this is an important conversation to talk and to actually be able to really know what's going on behind the background, because this is not just something that just started yesterday. This is something that's been going on for decades, and it's been being ignored. And it's that old analogy that I use all of the time of the kid with a pet boa constrictor that he can let wrap around his arm or his torso, but he's strong enough to pull it away. And eventually the snake grows and it grows and it grows. And eventually he can't pull it away, and he gets swallowed by the snake. And that's really where we are right now. So when our elites got cheap goods, campaign donations, because that's a lot of the way this money gets filtered through to politicians, you got a pink slip. When globalists said, let's open up the world. And China said, great, we'll take it. That's when this all started. We opened up the world to a dragon that wanted to just burn our way of life to the ground. Free trade only works when both sides are free, when both sides are operating in good faith. China's not free. They're not operating good faith. They are a communist surveillance state with slave labor, no environmental regs. Because it was funny, just a couple of points ago, we talked about how they were trying to lead the world in advanced manufacturing and green technology. Do you know how many coal plants go up almost on a weekly basis in China? They're the biggest violator of any kind of standard that the EPA or the globalist wet dream green initiatives want to push. They are the biggest violator.
That was why Trump got us out of the Paris Accords, because we were expected to abide by this net zero bullshit, and China was just saying, no, we ain't got to.
Yep. And what I will say too, when we start to lay this out, we're laying this out, and you start to go back and you're like, oh, the moves that Trump has made, even in his first term, start to make a lot more sense. Paris Climate Accord, starting to tariff China, starting to push back on them to the point where I've said this for a long time. China is strong, but they're also a little bit of a paper tiger. Like the S2 just said just a minute ago. 60% of their manufacturing shut down because of these tariffs right now. So they're very, very vulnerable on the world stage. And we have to strike while we can before the snake gets too big. So now we fast forward to where we are now. And I'm actually going to bring in some more very recent news, because this was New York Post today, actually reporting that Trump apparently just said there will be no exemptions. And this was basically 4:26 p.m. Eastern time. So 3 hours ago, Trump says no exemption for iPhones and other Chinese made electronics, suggests new tariffs coming. Trump is playing a very, very strong-minded game with China. And he is trying to get them to come to heel and at least start to approach us with the understanding that, hey, we know what you're doing. He's much more.
I had heard over the weekend that he was actually easing back on the electronics and those sorts of things.
That's what I had heard this morning. And then when I was doing my research for the SITREP, by the way, guys, sign up for the Guardians, and you get all of this information at your fingertips. You can read it. You can digest it in all different ways. $9.99 a month. It's very important that you guys have all of this information for when you're debating your coworkers who think that what the latest Pod Save America episode talked about tariffs and how bad they are doesn't understand. But apparently,
the first clue to me that when we were starting to look into the World Economic Forum and what they wanted to do, there was something in their description of their Great Reset book that was very similar to what China had already done, because back in 1980, China had established special economic zones in Shenzhen, Zhuhai, Shantou, Xiamen, Fujian province. Basically, they had one certain part of industry in one particular province. They would have agriculture in another portion and those kinds of things. And that's exactly what they wanted to do here. They laid it. There's actually a map of it that they had laid out, the economic zones that they wanted to divide the United States up in. So China has been playing with this model for quite some time now. And they somehow had gotten in bed with the World Economic Forum and said, hey, this is what we do. This is what you should make them do too. And it became a conspiracy amongst world governments to do this. And we're seeing it all over the place.
Yep, absolutely. You're dead on there. And so here's Reuters with a similar headline. Trump says chips from China will face national security probe, further tariffs expected. So he's actually not going to bite on the whole, hey, this is going to cost the American people a lot of money. So this is the thing that people don't understand about tariffs is it's a way for us to protect critical infrastructure. It's a way for us to bargain and get a fair, even playing field on the world stage. And it doesn't allow the low T GOP and the aggressive moronic Democratic Party to actually come together on something, the president can actually use these and be able to affect other countries in the way that they do commerce with us. It's very, very important that they have this tool and this ability to do it. The other thing is the de minimis rule elimination. This is the exemption of low value imports under $800. That has been removed. So think Shein, think Temu, think all of these other Chinese run sites that give you dirt cheap garbage and fast fashion that have blown up over the last 4 years, 5 years, that is basically slave labor made products that are direct copies and ripoffs of American or higher dollar goods. And they sell just about everything. I mean, you can buy optics on Temu that are direct copies of EOTech now. Honestly, the ones that I've seen have been garbage, but this is a way for this was a way or an exemption that allowed them to still bring these goods in. That has been removed, which is a good deal for us because that allows that keeps them from being able to flood us with cheap goods, which is what we've been addicted to for years.
Sucks for my drone hobby, though.
It does. And the reality is like this is going to affect us, guys. It is. We have to understand why, though, and that's what we're trying to lay out for you guys tonight is the why. Why do we need to actually take this seriously? Why do we need to say, hey guys, we need to actually start, if we can buy something that's American made rather than Chinese made, we need to. And here's the reason why that technology is being made cheaply by China is because we outsourced it. We gave them the ability to steal that from us. We gave them the ability to steal technology from us and then make it for cheaper because they don't have to adhere to labor laws. They don't have to adhere to minimum wages. They don't have to adhere to OSHA regulations. They literally can just make this stuff dirt cheap and force people to make it. And that's the reality of it.
Well, and that takes you back to a problem that you have with the chips too. And I keep going back to election integrity stuff. We had discovered early on when the investigation started into the equipment that was coming. That equipment comes from China, one way, shape, or form. It's brought in here into the United States and it's assembled here.
Yep.
We became an assembly-only country. We did not be. We don't manufacture any of that stuff here anymore.
Yep.
But what we found is that there were a lot of people don't know that these things exist on these chips. They can put things onto these chips that are smaller than a grain of rice.
Yep.
That they can use for eavesdropping, that they can use for absconding with technology just by simply accessing it through a modem of sorts that are on board these things. So probing the chips, it's really going to have to be a little more than a probe. It's going to have to be a deep dive look into and tearing apart these chips to see exactly what's in them to make sure that they make sense from an engineering standpoint. And frankly, I think we really just need to cut off all chip buying from China because Taiwan Semiconductor has been making large moves to get over here. They're opening up a big plant down in Arizona, is my understanding. And if that happens, then Taiwan Semiconductor becomes an American company.
Yes. Yep. So that actually segues perfectly into the next thing I'm going to talk about, which is Industrial and Supply Chain Initiative, Section 232 investigations. That's the probes that we're talking about into semiconductor imports aimed to bolster domestic production and potential tariffs up to 25% on those items. I think I had one that wasn't open here. Yep. Sorry about that. So let me share this real quick. Commerce to launch Section 232 semiconductor probe, and the investigation could lead to new tariffs on semiconductors that would in a move that would have sweeping implications for Asian countries and tech sector. And Adding on to that is strategic mineral stockpiling. This is another reason why Donald Trump wants to look at Greenland, because there's one thing that Greenland has. It doesn't have a lot of people. It has a metric crap ton of rare earth minerals in it. And this is something that's close to our country that we can easily protect, that would give us a backup plan, because you guys know that when we pulled out of Afghanistan, the Chinese were in there within like freaking hours talking about mining rare earth minerals to give them money.
Oh, they were in there taking our shit back to China to reverse engineer it.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the other thing that should royally frustrate every red-blooded American patriot out there, is that China came into Afghanistan. They got our IP, our military IP. Remember the billions of dollars, $80 billion worth of military equipment we left behind? Yeah. Guess who got access to that? The Chinese. And they're over there, as S2 said, reverse engineering this crap. And it's dangerous, because there's a very, very good chance we may have to fight a kinetic war with China at some point. Unless we do something now, we're going to be fighting a war. Now, it won't look like the wars that we've fought in the past because of the technology advances that they have. But, we have to understand, and this is what I think Trump understands better than most people, is he understands the threat to American sovereignty that China is.
We just cut them off. It's that simple. We're going to have to get rid of a lot of corrupt politicians, which I think all signs pointing to the way things are starting to shape up. I think there's going to be a lot of our criminals in our government, in our legislature, and our bureaucracies that are going to be removed to make that possible.
Yep. 100%. And so national security measures, this is fentanyl related tariffs. So talking about the synthetic opioid crisis. So that's fentanyl. And there are many strains of fentanyl, but this has been coming through our borders, the southern border and various other places. And it has led to a synthetic opioid crisis in this country. People are dying from fentanyl every day. I actually know there was a local, I just heard this story on Friday. There was a local prison guard. We have a fair amount of medium to high security prisons in Illinois. And in the southern part, just probably about 45 minutes from my house, there is a medium security prison. There was a prison guard, two prison guards going through and censoring mail. This is a common practice in prison. They want to make sure that there is nothing important or incriminating for the inmates. So they go through their mail. They opened up the mail and there was
there is something incriminating.
Yes, exactly. Yes, that's more of the accuracy there. But anyways, he opened the letter and there was a crystallized powder form of fentanyl, and him and two other prison guards, he almost died, and the two others had to spend a week in the hospital. I mean, and they were super worried about the fact that these guys could have a relapse episode and end up dying because of stuff, the way this stuff affects you. If you're getting a concentrated dose of it, it can kill you very, very quickly and very effectively. That happened in little podunk Southern Illinois.
Well, that's also another concern with our supply chain for a lot of our medical supplies coming out of there as well, because a lot of the stuff is being laced with fentanyl, and people don't even know it. I mean, you think about it, something as simple as an antibiotic. That's why a lot of people are getting their antibiotics from India now. But even then, we have the quality of those pharmaceuticals that are coming into the country. That's the biggest problem with the pharmaceuticals coming from China, is not necessarily worrying about whether they're laced with fentanyl, but whether they're up to standards. Because when you're expecting a medication to do the job and it's contaminated with a bunch of crap, or it's not as potent as it should be because of the manufacturing standards,
Yep.
then you're putting your life in danger relying on those.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that is, this is where Trump is trying to push everybody into a global trade realignment to get everybody off of the tit of China, in all honesty, to get everybody off of pulling in these cheap goods and realigning the trade makeup of the world, because we have to push back on all of these things that we've allowed to go on for years, for decades, and almost a half a century. And we're talking about, the dangers of what can happen, but the reality is we've got to do something before it's too late, and it could be too late very, very quickly. So Trump, obviously, last week the big headline was that he raised and skyrocketed the tariffs on China, did a 90-day pause on everybody else, down to, I think it's like 10%, with some exceptions. Like there are a few countries still with higher issues or higher tariffs on them. So, and this was like actually a couple months ago. So this was from February 9th. So he was actually planning this. So this was Prime Minister Modi and Donald Trump summit, and this was talking in the relations to how they can counter China and economic and military influence. So he's been laying the groundwork for this ever since he took office. And it's important that we support this, because this is the only way out of this
He's
mess.
been planning it long before that.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I'm really just speaking in just since he took office. But yes, this has been planned. I mean, go back to his first term, go back to him speaking out against China in the early 2000s and talking about how they were eating our lunch. They literally were. It's just that our politicians were eating lunch along with them. And that's been the biggest problem. I mean, can we take a moment and realize, Donald Trump was right about a lot of things. And I don't think Donald Trump is Jesus Christ incarnate. I don't think that he makes every right decision. I don't think that at all. But I think when it comes to China, he's been pretty much dead right on everything. And he's understood it because he's been in the business world. He understands how these dirty deals are done and how these dirty deals are basically implemented. So it's important for us to know that as well.
I take Trump's first term as a recon mission.
Yes, I agree. So at the end of the day, China's dominance wasn't inevitable. It was permitted. For decades, American leadership, captivated by the illusions of globalism, handed Beijing the keys to this castle. We opened our markets, we surrendered our manufacturing, we exported our innovation, all in the name of free trade, which in reality was free for China, but devastatingly expensive for us. That's absolutely true. They took full advantage of why, and why wouldn't they? When you're playing chess against a team of corporate lobbyists, globalist bureaucrats, and soft-handed academics, the outcome isn't hard to predict. But the board is flipping. President Trump has a plan, and it's a serious response, the most serious response in decades. Tariffs aren't just taxes, they're tactical, strategic, a lever of sovereignty. His approach targets the very arteries of China influence: trade, imbalances, critical minerals, intellectual theft, pharmaceutical dependency. That's one thing that we haven't really talked. I think S2 actually spent a little. Most of our pharmaceuticals come from China, guys. How easy would it be for them to lace a shipment of those that go out to everyday Americans and kill a bunch of us by just lacing them with something? Do you think that's above them?
It's not just our pharmaceuticals. It's our supplements, our vitamin supplements.
Yep.
I mean, and they're all contaminated, and they're all made with what's the word I'm looking for? They're all made with low class ingredients.
Yep. And this can't be our goal. Our goal cannot be coexistence with communism. And that's been the goal. Deal with communism because we're getting cheap stuff. That's that's a broken ideology.
Well, that's why you also mentioned academics too.
Yep.
So you have all of the academics. You've had a lot of people think that Mike Pompeo did all of these great things by getting rid of the Confucius Institutes and the colleges around the United States. But guess what? He didn't. They
Yep.
went underground and they rebranded themselves as something else. They're still in existence on our college campuses.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I'm sure there are a lot of fine people that came over here from China to study, but the problem with it is at the end of the day, they are beholden to the CCP government, and they are here to do one thing and one thing only. Actually, they're over here to do a couple of things. The first thing they're here to do is to gain the technology at our universities and take that back to China. The second thing they're here to do is to indoctrinate our kids in our colleges into communism, which they have done a pretty fine job of it thus far. And this is
Yep.
going to be the problem. This is going to be the struggle that we're going to face right now, because a lot of the people that are hardcore communists, they don't want to work. And when you have people running around talking about um, universal basic income and shit like that, you didn't earn that. And when you have a whole society that is built around not wanting to work and not doing anything, it's going to take decades to fix this problem, because
Mm-hmm.
we are going to have to reinstill a work ethic in our society. Is you either eat or you don't.
Yeah. Yep. And that is that is the truth. We need a revitalization, a reemergence of American patriotism. You know, the stuff that got us through the first Cold War. We're in another Cold War, guys. Like, it's just with a different person. It's just with a different country.
We've been
It's
in
the
a
same
Cold War for the
ideology.
last 5 years. We've been in
Yep.
a Cold War for the last 5 years.
Yep. Yep. So, in any case, so what's our takeaway from this? This is not a trade war, it's a values war. Where they build a surveillance state, we build free markets. Where they silence the church, we strengthen the pulpit. Where they breed compliance, we raise savages and teach them to wield it. That's important. We have to change the mindset. And don't fool yourself into thinking that China's not feeling this. They can talk a big game, but the reality is they are calling for a complete removal of these tariffs, because this is hurting them a lot more than they want to admit.
Oh,
We
they've been
have to
going
stand
crazy
up.
out. They've been going crazy out on X, basically coming off with statements like, "We're ready
Yep.
for any kind of war you want." And I mean,
Yep.
it's been the U.S. ambassador from China has been just been going off the whole time.
Which is saber rattling. And that's what people do when they feel like they're backed up against the wall. Now, the reality is yeah, they could go kinetic, because they could be, you know, when communist regimes start to fall, things a lot of times get violent. So we have to watch out for that, and we have to be aware of that.
They're a paper tiger backed into a corner at this point.
Yep. Yep. So we can defeat this dragon by bowing to it. We can't do that as our politicians and our elites and our, you know, top tiers in business. You know, like a lot of people want to praise Jeff Bezos for being a great businessman. Well, there's several things that you could go into with the Bezos thing. For one, he rode the wave of the tech boom in the early 2000s, which led him to being able to grow Amazon to what it is. Then he gutted Main Street mom and pop businesses, of which my father had one of those, and gutted them in the name of cheap goods that you could buy and have delivered to your house in a couple of days. Well, yeah, he's going to make money because he's offering comfort at the expense of American people. We have to stand up against this with courage. We have to, honestly, we're going to have to make some tough decisions personally, on a personal level, on who we do business with. I know I'm considering this stuff, and I use Amazon a lot and have over the years because it's convenient. We got to stop doing that kind of stuff. We've got to change our mindset. But Trump is holding ground. The White House says Trump has no plans to speak with Xi Jinping about the tariff war. So he's standing his ground. This is exactly what we need. We need strong men to do really, really hard things. And Trump has said, yeah, we're going to have some short-term discomfort, but long-term, we can turn this ship around. We can actually avoid the iceberg with this Titanic. But it's important that we know that. And let's band together as Americans to change course and to maybe have a country that's free and liberty loving again. So I will let you speak on this as we close out chapter 1.
Donald, call us, Donald. Please call us. We need to talk to you about the test. Donald,
Yeah.
why aren't you calling us, Donald?
Yep.
That's about all I have to say about it.
Yep. So we have to stand up. We have to do some of the things that are not necessarily comfortable for us. And long term, I think this is going to pan out for us if we stay strong as Americans, and if we remember that this is more than just about cheap goods and global trade, free trade. This is about ideologies, and we must defeat this ideology before it's too late. So that's the end of chapter 1, guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. We're going to do a quick message from one of our sponsors, and we're going to do a one for Flex Industries, and I will be right back with chapter 2.
AK Flex. AK Flex. The crazy part about this thing, it can fit in all platforms. This right here is in a 9mm. We running in the 7.62, 5.45, short, even in the Draco, the long 16-inch. AK Flex, baby.
Flex
I
Industries.
can't wait to take mine to the range.
I know. I am super excited to do the same thing. Flex Industries. They make amazing triggers. They make amazing products. Check them out. Use SD10 for 10% off of your order. I misspoke last week. I said 17. It's actually SD10. Use that for 10% off at checkout for your all of your items that you purchase from Flex Industries. But check them out. They're a great sponsor of the channel. And now we're going to move on to chapter 2. I just lost my mouse, which is great. So I'm going to have to use my touchpad on my Mac. So I apologize if this gets a little clunky, not intentional, but we do have some other news. And so for those of you that are new to the channel, chapter 2 is more of an overview of some important things that we have seen in the news that are outside of the main topic, which is chapter 1. So let's start off with Gun Owners of America. And this is really, really interesting because the Justice Department, in the middle of all of them talking about how they're so pro Second Amendment, have actually charged a Taylor Toronto with possession of a firearm. It was a CZ Scorpion. For those of you that don't know, what a CZ Scorpion is, it's a pistol caliber carbine, and they're very small, and they have some that have a 16-inch barrel, but most of these are in a pistol form. So what I mean is less than 16-inch barrel per the National Firearms Act. Let me show you this real quick. This is what a CZ Scorpion looks like. It's very small, about a 7-inch. It's about a 7-inch barrel, and doesn't really have any difference between it and a pistol necessarily.
That right there is a short-barreled rifle because it has a stock on it.
Yes, but this is a pistol brace, and per the ATF, this is completely legal to put on these weapons. So that is a pistol brace, and the DOJ has filed charges against this guy because he was in possession with a CZ Scorpion. What's really interesting about the charges is that they've charged him with possession of a unlawful handgun and an SBR, and it's the same weapon. It can't be both, but they've charged him with both. So I'm not sure what's going on at DOJ and with Attorney General Bondi, but this is not how you win hearts and minds in the 2A community. There's a lot of people that own these, and they have been completely legal for like 15 years. This is the same thing with a shorter barreled AR pistol with a pistol brace on it. The ATF made multiple rulings about this being okay, and then they would say it wasn't okay, and then they would say it was okay. All of those things have been gutted and removed, so technically this should be okay to possess. But they have filed charges against this guy. I'm going to look into it a little bit more, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in depth on Tuesday.
I can talk a little bit more about this. This entire case, while this is a component to it, this is a smaller. It's just gained traction because of the pistol brace thing, and basically, what the ATF turns around in this filing, and they say that, well, they think that they still have Chevron deference. Well, Chevron deference was kicked out the door last year. And they're basically just going rogue and saying we can interpret it however we want and we can enforce the statute as it is. Well, if you're going to enforce the statute as it is, you can't call it an unlawful pistol. You have to call it a short barrel rifle. And if it has a brace on it, then it's a pistol, period. So they're basically saying we can interpret it the way we want to interpret it, and that's what they're doing. And Bondi's got to get on top of this now.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. Meanwhile, General Mike Flynn asked Attorney General Pam Bondi, "Well, we're going to start. When are we going to start seeing arrests?" Well, we just saw an arrest. I mean, they're charging a guy with unlawful ownership of a firearm that was completely lawful 5 minutes ago. So there needs to be some action from DOJ. I'm going to just say this. I have been very, very disappointed so far with what I have seen. There's been a lot of talk, really, really low levels of action.
What I want everybody to understand is, yes, she is the AG. She's not responsible for arresting people.
Correct.
So there has to be a complaint. There has to be a complaint filed first. Then it's referred over to her for action, and then she can issue an arrest warrant back to the FBI or whatever law enforcement entity that is assigned to it. That's the way it works.
Yes.
So if a complaint filed, nothing's going to happen. That's the problem.
Yes. And to me, it's just been it's honestly been an underwhelming action in the DOJ. I know there's been a lot of talk about what they're doing, and they're forming these committees, and they're doing all this stuff, but we haven't really seen anybody held to task about, what they really should be going after and what they really should be doing. But my hopes is that the ship gets kind of turned around and fixed, and that we can actually move on and actually do some things that need to be done.
Remember what I said earlier, the way things are shaping up, it looks like there's going to be some things coming. Everybody's just got to be patient.
Yep, 100%. Okay.
You want it done now, or you want it done now, or you want it done right?
Correct. I understand that. It's just that they have talked a very large game, and we want to see some action. So, in other news, the British are kind of actually trying to start the Chinese model all on their own. Let's watch this 39-second video. This is British thought police warn elderly, partially deaf man that saying "speak English" is a hate crime. I think the name of the country they're in is England. Could be wrong. This is a plan for the goal that the globalists have for every Western nation they are publicly destroying, and the U.S. needs to liberate the UK from the NWO occupation. Let's watch this 39-second video.
Apparently during some conversations between yourself, apparently you have alleged, we weren't here, so I don't know who said it, but you've alleged to say, "speak English." What's that effect? Speak clearly.
No, the gentleman's partially deaf.
Yeah, he can speak clearly. Yeah.
So I couldn't even hear him.
No, and that's fine, and that's why we've just come to speak, because potentially someone could perceive that as a hate crime.
Didn't we just know this was going to happen?
No, I know.
People, you know, if someone says to me, officer, I believe this, then we need to look at it, because someone's potentially reporting to me apparently during some.
Get your snap response for that, S2.
Fuck off.
I think a lot of people think that. We've said this ad nauseum, and England and Europe is lost to multiple different things, but mainly the Islamic infiltration, and they're on the side of this whole free trade crap as well. So, and they've been tariffing us and screaming bloody murder when we add tariffs to them. So, good riddance and F off. I completely agree. In other news, this lovely dude was mad because he got misgendered.
Very good. Thank you so much. No, thank you. I'm not a nothing like a good misgendering. It is a knife in the gut when I get called sir. I feel like I need to tell him. I need to tell him that hurts. It hurts more though, and it's not intentional, because it means like this is sir to him. I know you didn't mean it, but I'm not a sir. It's okay. I know you didn't mean it. It's just, it hurts. I know when people clock me, it's fine, but like it does kind of hurt. Very good. Thank you so much. No. Oh.
Yeah, the Adam's apple is very common on females, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, I saw it, so you guys had to as well. These people are crazy. They're nuts. And this needs to be really, I think the best thing to do with this kind of stuff is just ridicule and make fun of it and laugh at it, because if there's one thing evil hates, it's being laughed at. And that's really, this deserves all the bullying in the world, 100%. In other news from Libs of TikTok, just in, Democrat Rep Jasmine Crockett is now under investigation by the FEC over donations made to her campaign through the leftist fundraising organization Act Blue. That's all our favorite one, right, guys? Evidence reportedly shows that an individual donated to her campaign over 50 times without their knowledge, suggesting that the donations were being given under false names. Crockett received $870,000 in total donations through Act Blue.
She got smurfed.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Couldn't have happened to a better crazy leftist. Just insane. Just insane.
And she'll just turn around and say, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know where that money came from. Act Blue gave it to me.
Right. Exactly. We all believe that. Right, guys? Goodness. Just crazy. In other news, ESPN's Stephen A. Smith is contemplating a run for the presidency. I know Stephen A. Smith because I used to watch professional sports. I don't anymore, but this guy is a kind of a charlatan. He's definitely an egomaniac. He injects himself into stories about sports, but says that he wants to run for president to give a measured candidate. So real quick, 2-minute video of why he is running, and he has no choice. So let's watch this.
I saw you mentioned Bill Maher. I saw Steve Bannon was on with Bill Maher, and he was asked what Democrats he worries about. And you know what? The only name he mentioned as a Democrat he'd be worried about. So are you really thinking about running for president? Is this something you think?
Listen, I have no choice, because I've had elected officials, and I'm not going to give their names, elected officials coming up to me. I've had folks who are pundits come up to me. I've had folks that got a lot of money, billionaires and others, that have talked to me about exploratory committees and things of that nature. I'm not a politician. I've never had a desire to be a politician. I just signed a contract extension with ESPN. I am very, very
pretty good one too
with my day job. I'm very happy with my bosses. It's a pretty damn good one. Just right. It's a pretty damn good contract. I couldn't be happier. But here's the reality. People have walked up to me, including my own pastor, for crying out loud, who has said to me, you don't know what God has planned for you. At least show the respect to the people who believe in you, who respect you, who believe that you can make a difference in this country, to leave the door open for any possibilities 2 to 3 years down the line. And that's what I've decided to do. But again, whether it's Westmore, Governor Westmore, who I know, or Governor Josh Shapiro from Pennsylvania, who I know, Andrew Cuomo, who I had the pleasure of interviewing, who's trying to get back in things and be the next mayor of New York, etc. I see a lot of people that obviously and clearly are more qualified than me. But in the same breath, when you think about what Trump is getting away with, when you think about what you brought up about Steve Bannon, who's trying to be slick because he's looking at a non-political individual like myself, looking at me as a populist, but you better be careful what you ask for, because some of the stuff that Trump and the right has been trying to get away with, like circumventing the 22nd Amendment of the Constitution, talking about how there could be a third term. Excuse me, be careful what you wish for, because if any GOP member, if any Republican supports that, I don't want to hear a word out of their mouth.
I can't listen to it anymore. But what are your thoughts on Bannon's characterization of Stephen A. being a threat?
Bannon was joking.
Yeah,
This guy looks like a dime store Al Sharpton to me.
that's great. Yeah, this is a guy who is a charlatan. He wants to be in the limelight and wants to fancy himself as some kind of savior for, the black community. And I mean, in all honesty, people don't take him seriously most of the time anyways. So
let's see, how many candidates do we actually have on the Democrat side that say they're running for president? We've got Jasmine Crockett. We got this bozo.
AOC.
I think AOC. Maybe Bernie Sanders will give it a jab again.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, y'all. Keep going. Dilute your vote for us, please.
Right. Exactly. And it's kind of funny because there's so many people that see through this crap. And I do think that while Trump is a celebrity, I think that the celebrity politician thing is kind of dying off in the world, and people are ready for more substance than entertainment. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and page Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. What branch of the military is this dude in? I was looking really bad for a clip of Arlie Ermy saying, "Because you are a disgusting fat body."
Well, Hegseth did say over the weekend that every branch of the service was going to be adopting the United States Marine Corps PFT from now on.
Yep.
And you will do the 3-mile run.
Yep. Well, there's going to be a lot of failures. So, based off of what's been going on,
that dude's a fucking candidate for the fat boy platoon right there.
The candidate for a heart attack, honestly.
Anyways, no, the
anyways,
Marine Corps, there's such a thing as a fat boy platoon. They send if you're overweight, they send you off to a special camp to lose weight.
Oh, and so they had not a fat boy platoon, but if anybody got designated as overweight or fat in basic training, even in the Air Force, back when I went through, we had several. And you were put on this program, and when you went to mealtime, you got basically like a minute to eat. Those guys dropped like 50 pounds in like 7 weeks. It was insane. Like those guys got crazy skinny because they were basically like, yep, you're going to get, you better stuff your face because that's all the calories you're getting for 3 more hours.
It's like 24/7 PT and low calorie count.
100%. So, this is the next one, and this one I always like to add a few of these in because this is specific about faith. Across Politics, a great channel to follow if you guys are looking for kind of the integration between faith and politics. Doug Wilson is a really awesome dude in the Christian nationalist vein and inside of the church, and very, very amazing. But he's kind of talking here, and this is something that I completely agree with. I've been a musician in church ever since I was 14 years old. Grew up playing music in church. The church has become so feminized, and we need a return to masculinity in everything, including the music that's played in church. But let's watch this 30-second clip.
If you have a masculine worship service, it brings the women and children. If you have a feminine worship service, which evangelicals generally do, it alienates the men. They either leave or they come muttering, or they acclimatize to it and
they become effeminate
and become effeminate themselves.
Right.
But we had some visitors a few years ago who came and sat through our worship service and participated, and they stood up afterwards, and one of the ladies said, "Well, that was masculine." If you have a masculine.
Yep. And I'll speak to that I think that it's important that we have men start standing up inside of the church. It's been far too long. We talk about culture. We talk about global events. We talk about all this stuff. But if we really want to see a change in this country, we need men to lead in the church, in the home, everywhere. And stop getting caught up with sports and all this other crap that's just a distraction, and start being, strong leaders.
And I'll add this to that. If you got a pastor, if you've got a priest, I don't care what you call them and what denomination you belong to. If they're up there speaking bullshit from the pulpit to you, it's your duty to call it out, because I've seen it happen too many times. They're up there warping scripture in front of their congregations, and the Catholic Church is one of the worst ones with it.
Yep, 100%. And the church in the West has been feminized, massively feminized, to the point where they don't want strong men in the church. And you've seen this from an organizational standpoint. The SBC, the Catholic Church, they've all kind of turned to these woke, very effeminate, soft-spoken type priests that don't actually call out evil. They don't actually call out sinful behavior. They don't actually do what we're actually supposed to do that the Bible talks about. And as a result, you've gotten a soft, watered down church. And it's a broken thing. And we have to stand up. And that's really, kind of the changes and the new direction of this channel, really, with the change in the rebranding of the Christian Sentinel. We want to stand on the vanguard. We want to be those that call this out in culture, that actually push the church to do what it's supposed to be doing. Our society and our culture were built on Christian values. And John Adams said this Constitution is for a moral and religious people, and without that, it will not work. And Chris has got an amazing episode for you guys tomorrow, so make sure you tune in on that front. But this is a huge thing, and we need to see more of this. This is Caroline Leavitt prior to going out and seeing the press. This is an amazing clip. More of this.
Lord Jesus, please give us the strength, the knowledge, the ability to articulate our words, have fun, and be confident in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay. Lord Jesus.
And that is the press room praying before she goes out to give God her the ability to articulate the points, to be able to fight against the misinformation. Man, that's awesome. We need more of that. I'm
getting ready to burst Mike Sterling's bubble or make his day. Her husband is 59 years old.
What?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's what I would call a lucky fella. So, yes, that's crazy. I did not know that. That's funny. Okay. And in the same vein, Fox News posted this just earlier today, I believe. Yeah, earlier today at about noon. I was saved. This is Donald Trump opening up about his relationship with God and how his faith grew even stronger after he survived an assassination attempt during his rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. I said this from the get-go. The moment that I saw him, because it was just a couple days later that he showed up at the RNC to accept the nomination for president. I think it was a week later, and he was a different guy. Glenn Beck, I remember vividly him saying, he's changed. He's a different person. And I think that brush with death and realizing that, I mean, he gives God the credit for turning his head. I think that when you see the slow motion movement of how improbable that movement of his head was at the exact time that the trigger was pulled, you know, it was an act of God. And I truly believe that. And I think that he believes that as well. And this is incredible to see the president actually saying, yeah, God saved me. I couldn't save myself. God saved me. That's incredible. Incredible. So that's the good news. And we're going to watch this. I saw this last night, and I have two young sons, a 12-year-old getting ready to be 13 and a 9-year-old that will be 10 in August. And this is cultural cancer. And you can find clips like this all over the internet and in your feeds and everything. But this girl looks like she's maybe 19 years old. Watch this clip. Let's watch this clip real quick.
You're gonna have to turn the volume up on these clips. People are complaining they can't hear them.
Okay.
One night before.
Like 10.
10?
Like 10.
You got with 10 guys in one night?
Well, it was before we were dating, so it doesn't matter.
It does matter to me.
It doesn't matter.
No, I'm being serious. Like, when did you go with 10 guys in one night?
It was before we were dating, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
No,
We
it
were
matters to me
dating.
that you got with 10 guys in one night. How long you guys been dating for? A year.
It was before we dated.
It doesn't matter when it was.
Why are you getting angry? It's fine.
No, it's not fine. Who the fuck is her? Who is she? I don't even know her anymore.
Oh.
10 girls in one night? 10 guys
Well,
in one
we
night?
weren't dating, so why does it matter?
Doesn't
Because you a hoe, that's why it matters.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are the girls that my mom warned me about. And the unfortunate thing is because we have, through things like OnlyFans, pornography, we have actually taught girls, young girls, that commoditizing their bodies is what guys want. And when they go to actually be in a stable relationship, and there's not very many guys that I know that wants to settle down with a girl like that. And it's sad because she's an attractive young girl. Probably very nice, but has basically sold her body out for whatever it was. And that's cultural cancer. That's man, just broken.
That was a case where she probably should have kept her mouth shut.
Exactly. But you know what's crazy as to is what culture is actually teaching these young girls is that that's actually okay. I mean, there's whole podcasts for porn stars now, all over the place, multiple of them. And then like they pop into feeds all the time. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? We are glamorizing immorality. And
well, it's also something else too. That's a direct attack on marriage in itself.
Yes.
Which is a goal of communism, to disrupt the relationship between a man and a woman, because when you start getting into those sorts of subjects and you start acting on them, you start desensitizing yourself to the emotions that should occur between a man and a woman in a marriage.
100%. Yep. You know, and I'm so thankful that I found my wife when I did, and it's important to have that bond, you know. And no marriage is perfect. Every marriage has its issues. Every marriage has its struggles. But you know, the actual word economy is a family level term. That actually means a household. That's what the original root of that word is. And so when you talk about economy, that's the fingers that go out. It starts with a family, and then it grows to a community, and then it grows to a region. And without strong families, the communists will win. And that's how it's just all tied together. This is all tied together. The cultural cancer that we see with all of this commoditizing of sexuality and immorality is another wave of attack. It's another angle of attack that the communists want to do, so that they can destroy our culture from the inside out. And when the culture is gone, then it's no problem for them to march in, because, you know, we have nothing to stand on, nothing to reference.
Well, and this also becomes a problem too, because what ends up happening is you have the men out there, the real men out there, that don't want to be involved with women like this. And then you have a lack of reproduction, which leads to a declining population.
Yep.
So everybody needs to understand what they see. It's just so very subtle but that's the way communism operates. That's the way
Mm-hmm.
Satan operates. It's all
Yep.
very subtle, but when you see it, you can recognize it and you can do something about it.
One of these days, me and you need to do an episode on the origins of communism and how, Karl Marx was actually a Satanist. And there's evidence to it to actually back that up. But that's a long, deep conversation, and maybe I'll pull out all of the history of that one time, and we'll do a main chapter on that, because boy, when you see those parallels, woo, it's crazy. Anyways, I can't think of a better upgrade. So the White House just replaced a portrait of Barack Obama with one of the most iconic photos. Couldn't think of a better better replacement there. 100%.
Man, I miss the 80s. We had good music back then.
Agreed. So here's another thing, and I'm just going to touch on this at the end of chapter 2, because this is something that's kind of growing, and I actually kind of wanted to get your opinion on this. So Mr. Guns and Gear, Real ID announcement receives waves of pushback on X. So the Real ID announcement was that everybody needs to get one of these Real IDs, which is a much more difficult process to go to get an identification. The same people, right? Well, the same people that said Patriot Act would protect America are the same people saying Real ID Act will do the same. Unsurprisingly, the same person wrote both pieces of legislation. In 2005, President George W. Bush signed the Real ID Act into law. It was authored by Representative James Sensenbrenner, and the same author, representative from Wisconsin, Republican, the same author of the Patriot Act. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, they're getting pushback on it because it's making. So there's a couple of reasons. One, they are revoking the Social Security numbers that were handed out to illegal aliens. And this is carrying over into that, because basically what they're doing now is they're telling illegals, we're cutting off your money, we're cutting off your Medicaid, we're cutting off your Medicare, and you're not going to be able to get on an airplane without a Real ID. So they're basically forcing those people to self-deport. That's where the pushback is coming from. Personally, I have a Real ID, and when I look at it like when I first got it, I was like, oh, that's kind of fucked up. That looks like a Jewish star on my driver's license. And I started instantly thinking to myself, I don't trust my government. Why are they putting a yellow star on my license? Because it was the same thing they did to the Jews before they marched them off into the gas chambers.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm sure there's something behind that. I also think, in fact, I pretty much am about 95% sure that all of these Real IDs have a new microchip in them. And in fact, I've examined mine, and I can actually see that there is a new microchip in it. It's a little. Remember, I was telling you about the tiny grain of rices devices that are on chips. Well, that's what this is.
Yep.
So I don't really know whether this is part of a track and trace program, because I don't have anything to back that statement up with. So.
Yeah, and I think more is going to come out about it, because this has made news quite a bit over the last couple of weeks, and I think it's just going to continue, because people don't like to be effed with in this day and age. They're kind of tired of this stuff, and man, people just don't trust the government for good reason. But anyway,
yeah, 50. You got 5 decades of the government fucking with you. It's understandable.
Yep. So that's the end of chapter 2. We like to give you a broader look at some news and important cultural things. And so we're going to move directly into chapter 3. because we're running a little short on time, and I just have a few, about 10 little posts that I wanted to share with you guys. But we have a little bit more fun in chapter 3, and wanted to give you guys a little bit of kind of lightheartedness to go on. Although the first one's about Kamala Harris. So sorry. Here we go. 26 seconds.
Why would you want the first female president of color to be one of the dumbest people we've ever had in politics who's achieved literally nothing? Honestly, what a setback for women if she's the first one black, which she's not. There's no way she's popular. She's like literally been a laughing stock for the past 4 years. She's accomplished nothing. I've heard no one who wants to vote for her say anything besides she's a woman and a woman of color.
Right.
That's all they got.
They're saying Michelle Obama might step in.
She's probably more qualified. Why would you?
I would disagree with that last statement because, you can't have a dude be the first woman president, right?
I would say that they were meeting their diversity quotas with Kamala. I mean, she's the first cackling hyena.
Yep. Okay. From Rothmus, idolizing a politician is like believing a stripper really likes you. 100%. 100%. Don't idolize politicians. They are not good people. Here we go. There are 2 types of people in this world. And this is quite funny, actually. 10 seconds. Watch that again.
The hell was that all about?
You've never seen these 2 clips. So this is a little girl that has her own channel on YouTube, Instagram. I think she's like 9 or 10 now. This was back like when she was 6, called Autumn's Armory. Check her out. Hilarious. But she's like a running gunner. This is a dude that I think he was doing some kind of puff piece on the dangers of firearms. And when he shot it, he like has this high speed come apart and starts crying. So, raise your daughters.
I've never seen a liberal behave like that after shooting a firearm. What I've always seen is, can we do it some more?
Yeah. Unless it's some kind of an act, and I would bet you that this was some kind of a planned act. So, here's a fun one. I don't know I'd ever put a firearm this close to this dude. 13 seconds. Let's watch this.
Oh yeah, I know this dude. Fastest disarm in the world.
Watch carefully. Watch how fast he moves.
His name's Victor something or other.
That's
when he was young. That's when he was young. He still does it. He still can do that.
That's so. Like, I would love to actually time this out because that's faster than almost anybody can pull the trigger. That's what's insane about it. Like
the only problem with those disarms is he never gets offline.
Yeah,
that just makes me like, dude, get offline, will you?
Yep. Okay, for all of you guys in the Navy and Army and who had to deal with warrant officers, they really don't like to show up for PT, but when they do. Well, let's just check it out. 27 seconds. Here we go.
What do you think? You're the coolest guy in the parking lot? And then
like showing up for PT in an Apache.
Yeah, they're getting ready to get a real surprise here shortly.
God says love one another. Okay, us. But what if they... God, did I stutter? Remember, we're supposed to love everyone. Doesn't mean we have to like everyone. Here's a good one for all of you computer nerds, like myself. When I open my eyes in the morning after just waking up, loading terrain.
Yeah, mine does. No, that used to be when my eyes were closed. I would see code in my sleep.
So, yep. Anyways. And here we go from Handle It Grips. This is pretty impressive, if I do say so myself. This is a young lady. I think this is Alexandra. She's a big time with Black Ruffle Coffee guys and stuff like that. But 22 seconds. This is rather impressive. Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Stick a heavy buffer in it. Good to go.
Yep. So, anyways, that's kind of what we had for the fun stuff. I'd like to thank you guys for stopping by. I want to give you guys some homework, considering that we spent really over half the show on the Chinese stuff. And this is going to be stuff that we can all do as a practical way. And for all of us that are believers in Christ, I'm going to tie in some scripture as well with each one of these, and then I'll turn it over to S2 to add to it if he wants to. So first, homework with the what's going on with the tariffs and the trade war is audit your spending. Go through your Amazon orders, your favorite stores, and your go-to brands. Identify how much of your life is funded by Made in China. Ask yourself, is it convenient? Is it convenience feeding my enemy? It's my convenience feeding my enemy. Stewardship matters. So Matthew 6:21. For where your treasure is, your heart will be also. Stop funding what you wouldn't pray for. So important. Switch one product. Pick one product every day and switch to an American made or an allied nation alternative. Post it, share it, normalize the shift. We can have a lot of ability to speak out on this. And on a note for this, if we shift 10% of our spending, every American, we cripple the Chinese economic leverage. Educate your circle. Share one article or stat from this episode with your family or a friend. Don't lecture, equip. Most people have no idea how deep Chinese infiltration runs. They have no idea this has been going on for 50 years. And here's an optional bonus. Send them this episode and challenge them to complete the same checklist. Build something with your hands. Even if it's a small plant, plant a garden, reload some ammo, fix something in your house that you would have replaced. The goal is to push back against dependency with action. Nehemiah 4:17. This is actually a Righteous Savages moniker here. Those who carry burdens were loaded in such a way that each labored on the work with one hand and held his sword with the other. So we work and we prepare for battle. And that is something very, very important. Pray for discernment.
It's also a Native American tie-in as well.
100%. Pray for discernment and boldness. This isn't just economic, it's spiritual. Pray for bold leadership in our nation, conviction of your own families, protection over the next generation, because that's in reality what we're fighting for. We may go through some hardships, but if we don't turn the ship around, they're going to go through even worse. Ephesians 6:12, we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, principalities, powers, rulers of darkness, spiritual wickedness in high places. Those things are the ones that are pulling the levers of communism and all of this other evil that wants to take over the world and subdue it into slavery. It's important. That's it for me, and I'm going to turn it over to you, S2, to add or elaborate anything.
Dude, you got to leave something behind for me to take.
So
yeah, I really like the plant a garden, reload some ammo, fix something on your house, and that's a lot of the stuff that's on this checklist is stuff that we've already been doing for the last couple of years. We basically have all the prep supplies that we could possibly need and want for us at this point, at least as far as I can see what we would need. But we bake our own bread. I've got all of my first plantings of things in the ground right now, getting ready to take off here when the weather starts to get warmer. Um, we don't buy, like I said, we don't buy bread from the store anymore. My wife makes all of our bread now and all of our bread products. So we take a look at what a loaf of bread costs in the store right now as compared to what we can make it for. Yeah, it takes energy to do that, but that's another thing down the road. So like I said, we've been curtailing our spending on those things, aside from the fact that there's another big leap we're getting ready to take. Whereas if we can find the property, I'm going to start growing food on I don't say on a commercial scale, but on a local scale that possibly would be able to take down to a farmer's market and make a somewhat of a living of doing that. So that's another thing to take a look at too, is that your neighbors may not understand why you do what you do. I know a lot of mine don't. I have one neighbor that I've had deep conversations with him about, this is why I'm doing this. And I said this to him 5 years ago, and he didn't believe me that this stuff was coming. And now he's starting to see it. And he's like, yeah, okay, I can see what you said 5 years ago, what's coming, and it's here. And I said, it's going to get worse unless you do something to solve your problem for yourself. I can't solve it for you. I can tell you how to do it. I can point you in the right direction, but I can't make you do it.
Yep.
So that's part of the education piece that comes in, because the normie norm guy out there on the street, we all have jobs. There's some of us that have extra time on our hands, or we felt that it was important enough to look into some of these things that have been going on for the last 30 years, 30 to 50 years, actually. And we have all of this knowledge out here. So when you start talking to the people in your circle that may not be completely aware of all of this stuff, it's important for them. You have to find small ways to introduce it to them. Otherwise, you just come off as a nutcase. So
Yep.
you take one little thing from history and you apply it to what's going on right now. So you have to be very strategic about how you introduce this, like I said, or you'll be talking to a deaf audience.
Yes. And that comes from building relationships with people with your neighbors. This is counter today's culture. We don't know the people that live next to us, but we know all of the people on Facebook and Instagram, so start having those conversations, have your neighbors over for a backyard barbecue. We're starting to get into the warm months. Build relationships with people, because people are more likely to listen to people that they have relationships with than they are with people that just want to come and preach whatever the message is. And that's exactly what S2 is talking about. We have to have these relationships and spoon feed them and lead them to the conclusion and make them think that they led themselves. That's the honest truth. But we're
Start
thankful.
making eye contact when you're meeting with people in public.
Yes.
Start making eye contact. Nobody's doing this anymore.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
we went out. We go out to
This
eat maybe
is how
once
most people
once a
talk
week.
to me.
No,
Yeah.
it's worse than that. They are always constantly looking at the ground. Do
Yeah.
you know what other culture of people constantly look at the ground?
Asian
The
cultures.
China. Thank you.
Yep.
Where do you think that's coming from?
Yeah. It's learned behavior and embedded behavior. So real quick, before we close out, don't forget to support us on Patreon. If you guys like what we do, if you want to see more of this content, a little bit more deep dive into these subjects, and that's what I'm kind of planning, is to do a little bit more deep dive, to give you guys a history, to give you guys context, because we can't actually formulate opinions by snap opinions on the media. The media is dead and it's dying. What's left of it is still dying. But we have to understand history. We have to understand why these fights are important, and see the roadmap. And the way that you guys do that, the way you guys show your support to us, is through our Patreon and Substack. The Guardians, it's very important. Only $9.99 a month. You get access to the SDN Aftermath each Saturday. That is a private stream that Chris Heaven puts on for all of the Guardians. The Guardian, we used to call you guys insiders. We've changed that because we're rebranding. We're becoming the Christian Sentinel. We want to actually be those that educate people on politics and spiritual things, and maybe get some people to change their mindset about this. But you also get the daily SITREP. You get access to exclusive and behind the scenes content, access to the private encrypted signal chat, the 228-page essentials guide for free, and early access to content. So you guys can see what we're actually talking about in the episode before it happens. But you guys can join now at patreon.com/survival dispatch, or on Substack, survivaldispatch.news is, I said that wrong earlier, and I wanted to correct myself. It's survivaldispatch.news on Substack. You guys can get the SITREPs on there as well. All you have to do is sign up. So real quick, we have what you guys actually have been waiting for in the conflicted question. And this is a scenario called the Flashpoint Blackout. And I'll give you guys a chance to answer this because this kind of ties into what we're saying. Oh, and real quick, let me actually just do this as well. Adam, thank you. You've made a couple of donations tonight. $10 for the cause. We greatly appreciate that. You gave us $2 earlier. All of those donations are amazing. If you want to support us further, go ahead and get that Guardian subscription as well. But let's read this. The Flashpoint Blackout. It's mid-July, record-breaking heat. You and your family are at home in a mid-sized town when an unexpected nationwide cyber attack cripples the power grid. It's confirmed on emergency radio the attack originated from a hostile foreign adversary China. Cell networks are overloaded. ATMs don't work. Gas stations are closed. And within 48 hours, desperation sets in. Grocery stores are emptied. Your neighborhood turns tense. At 2:13 a.m. on night 3, you're woken by the sound of breaking glass. A group of looters are inside your neighbor's home across the street. You know they have young kids and they aren't preppers. You're armed. You have supplies. You have a tight perimeter, but if you intervene, you risk your life, your family's safety, and blowing the element of tactical surprise. If you do nothing, your neighbor may be left to fend for themselves. So here is the conflicted question. How do you balance the responsibility of protecting your own family and the biblical call as Christians to love your neighbor in the moment of lawless crisis? S2, would you intervene or leave it alone?
Oh, this is an easy one, actually. I would use the tactical element of surprise because if my neighbors across the street don't have anything, the looters aren't going to get anything. And if they decide that they're going to turn their attention to my house, they're going to come through my door and they're going to leave in a plastic bag.
Yep. So for me, I actually know my neighbors across the street and they do have young children, 4 of them actually, and they're great Christian people. But not necessarily preppers or anything like that. But I would definitely, if there's innocent life at stake, I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do, and I'm going to go to protect those people. Just no doubt in my mind what I would do, and I would have my 12-year-old cover the door while I go over there because he is a crack shot, and but that's what I would do. I think we are called to do those things. It's kind of the difference in approach that I do with prepping, where I actually consider that I might have to help some people and not just keep all of my preps to myself. I may actually have to help some people because we're called to do that as Christians, and I firmly believe that. But let's hear what you guys would do in the comments. Would you guys intervene, or would you guys stay out of it and protect your preps and not let them know your tactical advantage? Thank you, guys. It's been a wonderful episode. We really appreciate you guys joining in and staying with us. All of you guys have stayed with us the whole time. Real quick, please like, share, comment, and subscribe until tomorrow night when Chris will be here with an absolutely killer episode. I got a little preview earlier tonight, and this is incredible. And you guys are going to want to tune in because it's very prevalent for all of us as we navigate these uncertain times. But until then, you guys be safe, help your communities prepare, and God bless America.
Hoorah.
This is the fight of a lifetime. For decades, we've been ripped off, humiliated. They got rich. We got nothing. That's not friendship. That's theft. And it ends now. Tariffs are here to stay. We're the United States of America. Not their ATM, not their doormat. They laughed at us while we paid for everything. That ends today. Trump knows exactly what he's doing, and he's not afraid to act. There's only one answer, America first. No one else is coming to save it. Tariffs? Yeah, you better believe it. This country was run by globalists who sold us out. They rigged it. We paid. That ends now. Trump's given this nation back to the people who love it. If that bothers him, let him pay for it. Literally. We're taking back what's ours. We're rebuilding American strength. We're putting the people first. And it's about damn time.